Welcome, everyone. Oh, this is so exciting. I am excited. Our very first webinar that's presented by the Workplace Wellness Summit Club. Um, this is, a baby in the making over many months that started way back in September. My name is David Spinner. I am a member of the advisory board for the Workplace Wellness Club, and I'm going to moderate your session today, where we will be bringing up Debbie Bellinger. But first, before we do that, let me first and foremost talk a little bit about the Workplace Wellness Summit Club. What is it, and why is it so important that you join us here today and all our future events? So join the club. Back in the fall of 2021, Sumana Jetty started this process of bringing people together to have a summit on Clubhouse to talk about workplace wellness. From there, it expanded. We had a micro summit. We had another full-on summit that was a couple of days. And now we're starting to expand with webinars, fireside chats, all sorts of great information to help you, your employers, create a healthy workplace. So please go out, check out workplacewellnesssummit.club. That's our website, and join there, and you will be given access to a lot of great content. There's free content. There'll be some paid content. So, make sure you join that club so you get all the great information. You don't want to be missing out on any of it, because the speakers that we bring forth, the summit, the information is so important for every workplace so that we can move forward, past I won't say it, but you know what I'm talking about, the big P, and really have some healthy workplaces where the culture is strong and people aren't burning out on a regular basis, because that's what's been happening. And without further ado, I am so excited to bring up our very first webinar presenter, Debbie Bellinger. There you go, Debbie. Welcome. So Debbie, as of January 1, 2022, Debbie was the solopreneur of Body by Definition, which provides advisory services to individuals and organizations who wish to add wellness programming to their menu of services and offerings. She's also building on an on-demand education library for fit pros and small to medium-sized clubs. The first masterclass was launched back in February, on February 3rd, 2022, titled Fit Pros, How to Break into the Corporate Wellness. And this masterclass was accredited by various organizations across the board, ACE and the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, and the CEU as an 8.0 CEUs for AFAA. So really a strong speaker, and is going to bring some great information. In 2017, the World Idea, she was the World Idea Program Director of the Year and the 2014 Corporate Wellness Director of the Year for the Medical Fitness Association. Debbie will present her slides. Partway through, we're going to take a little break for some questions, so please use the space provided with comments, questions along the way. Our production team will get to them as we take the time, put them up on the screen, and Debbie will answer them. And then again, at the end, we'll have some time for more Q&A. So I want to welcome our audience from wherever you're sitting and watching this, morning, noon, night, whatever time of day it is. So sit back. And now, Debbie, the stage is yours.
Thanks, David. What a nice welcome. And I'm excited. I'm thrilled to be here. I want to say a thank you to Sumana. We've had a couple of conversations, and I attended one of her sessions maybe a month or two ago, and this is my passion, and it was so exciting to see her passion. It was like, how have we not met before? You know how that goes, right? So big thank you, big hugs to Sumana and David and Matt. And I am in South Carolina, but as Sumana knows and David now knows, I am Canadian. And so it's just been a whole swirl of synergy around meeting Sumana and having the opportunity to share some insights with you. And I'm really excited because my whole career has been a blend of growing up in fitness, moving along in my career to wellness, both in corporate wellness and medical wellness, working on hospital payroll systems. And all of that insight for me has created a very acute awareness of population health, right? So independent of the population that we're talking about, whether it is at work or it is in fitness clubs or it's in your local church, we're talking about the health and wellness of human beings, right? So today we're going to focus on workplace wellness conversation, although I do believe there's some nuggets within the PowerPoint that will apply to the masses, right? So hang with me. I'm super excited. Hello from Montreal. My sister is there still. And Matt, if you're good, we're going to go ahead and get started. And as you can tell, I am super duper excited about my topic. So just hold my hand and here we go. So this topic for me is well-being, not wellness, and why now? And what I want to do is kind of level set us, like David said, the big P. Not exactly saying it, that was cute. I'm going to steal that. Make sure that we kind of know the difference, right? And so what's happened in the last 2.5 years that we're talking about well-being, not wellness. Matt, next slide, please. So the learning objectives, clearly I would like for us to have the opportunity to understand the difference between well-being and wellness and the difference between the two. Most importantly now, when I started early on in my corporate wellness career, wellness was the language. And it was good at the time, but I do believe well-being is more appropriate now, given that we've experienced many crises over the last 2.5 years. So why now and what are the opportunities? Why do we need to be speaking to well-being? And then in part 2, when we come back in August, having an interactive session to level set with why now, what are the opportunities, which will allow for us to brainstorm solutions, right, for part 2. So moving on to next slide. So the definition of wellness, there are many. There's not just one, clearly, right? So the Global Wellness Institute defines wellness as the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. Wellness is multidimensional, and it may include tenets of physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, and environmental health. Right? So it relates to the intention, the action, the activities, and often in employee wellness programs specifically, and the fitness club industry, and I can attest to that. Everything starts with physicality, right? So more specifically, our journey starts with exercise. So just a nugget. Next slide, please. Now, well-being, again, there are many definitions. I'm sharing one with you. The idea of having a perception of a state of being. So it's associated with feelings of happiness, satisfaction, and a sense of fulfillment. Well-being is defined as a sense of health and vitality that arises from our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, and our experiences. So when we have well-being, we feel happy, healthy. We feel socially connected and purposeful most of the time. And this definition, I believe, is resonating and is necessary now, given all that we've endured in the last 2.5 years. So definition of well-being, state of happy, state of being, right? Next slide, please. In my world, one of my worlds, the Medical Fitness Association, there is the concept of, and this comes from being an employee wellness director and a wellness director for 2 hospital systems, the concept of population health and the wellness continuum. So the takeaway of this slide is solely to understand that there's degrees throughout the stages of our life where We might be well and we may be unwell. And it's a continuum, right? So it just depends what's going on in our life. We might be super healthy for 3 to 4 years, have a life event, have a health event, and our health possibly can change. And we move along that continuum over the lifespan of our respective lives. Next slide, please. So for fun, I'm sharing a well-being manifesto from an employer, a very well-known employer, and it resonated for me because I felt like, wow, finally somebody said it. It's okay, and this is Google's manifesto, to be seated to work, to stand to work, to have dodgy Wi-Fi, to be distracted. It's okay to be. And I felt like this was one of the first groups looking at different employer wellness models that kind of embraced the reality of what we've been going through. For anyone to assume that what we did before the pandemic to throughout the pandemic to where we are now, that what we used to do would be relevant anymore, just kind of didn't make sense, right? And this was a great example of a well-being manifesto for a large group of employees. And so I'm sharing it for you just as an awareness of some adaptation in the employer space. Next slide, please. So why now? Why are we talking about all this? Why well-being? Why does it matter? I'm going to say to you, I've grown up through this industry. My whole career has been in this industry. And honestly, if it's not why now, I mean, how can it not be now? It's more like that. I almost feel like maybe I should change this slide. But why now? Because there's no other option, right? So the pandemic has not been kind to us. And here are some of the statistics, very, very recent data that I found just to level set us as to why well-being really does matter through all different sectors of our world. 1 in 5 Americans is burned out, reported by the American Psychological Association. This is just from a few weeks ago. Obesity is forecasted to exceed 50% by 2030. For those of us in wellness, we all know the cost of obesity, right? A healthy individual versus an obese individual, health plan costs are very different most of the time. The Global Wellness Institute reported just last week that they found that in 121 nations, the level of stress, sadness, and loneliness to be the highest ever since 2006. So we're not functioning optimally. Virgin Pulse just reported, again, this is just last week, that the number one threat to businesses, which is all of us, is labor shortages, right? So labor productivity has suffered as a result of what we've endured in the last 2+ years. And the Great Resignation is raging on. I keep waiting for something to say that this is going to slow down. But just last week again, they reported that 74% of workers believed it would not be difficult to leave a job and find a better paying job, and that 40% are likely to leave their job in the next 3 to 6 months. So folks are having no issue with changing jobs, not working for a while, all of that in the space of looking at employers and organizational wellness. That makes things very challenging, right? If your workforce is so dynamic that you're continually hiring, training, developing, all of those things. So these are some very interesting statistics that impact all of us in workplace well-being. Next slide, please. And a lot of the adaptation phase with what the pandemic has spurred on, in addition to a health crisis, I also believe organizational crisis has become something that pre-existed COVID, but the pandemic has shone a light on a lot of things that maybe were not ideal, right? So before the pandemic, we had 1 in 67 folks working from home. It is now 1 in 6 working from home. Okay, so who cares? It's great. Working from home is great. It's wonderful. But if you translate that lens from an individual perspective, from us working at home to an organizational perspective, that has put an incredible load of time and attention on HR to have to manage work from home. Policies, IT, COVID policies, return to work, FMLA, all those things. Well, like I know and you know, employee well-being at work lives and breathes in human resources. It's a benefit. If HR is so busy doing all the HR duties, where has workplace well-being gone on the priority list of things to do, right? So it's not just work from home, it's all the managing of what a different workforce looks like. And now we have instances of return to work, mandates to return to work. That's not going so great. And then what is it going to look like going forward in the hybrid space, right? So we are very much still in an adaptation phase. Again, all of these activities might be keeping an HR person who typically has owned employee well-being initiatives to be very, very busy and now very stressed. And so maybe employee well-being isn't top of the priority list organizationally. And clearly we are in the 4th and 5th strain of COVID. So our reality is we are still living in fear of getting sick. And so with that, HR is also very, very busy looking at return to work, masking mandates coming back in place, all the things that impact HR and managing the workforce. The recession is looming. Fear and anxiety are everywhere. So if we just look across the universe, there are many crises underway. And so this has been a burden for us as human beings to get up and be optimistic every single day. Next slide, please, Matt. This particular slide, the takeaway is one of the most positive things of the pandemic is that human beings are demonstrating more interest in their health. McKinsey and Consulting and Company, they do tons of research. If you're not following this group on LinkedIn, I would recommend it because they're doing a lot more research in the health space. But this image is solely to show you that consumers are more interested. So the time is really good to say that the time is right for us to start talking more about employee wellness in general, because the universe is more interested. And we have never been more unhealthy. I could add 15 more slides around stats of 27 pounds gained per average person with the pandemic, 700% increase in alcohol consumption. I could go on, right? But the good news is we are paying more attention to our health. So this is our opportunity to shine, right? It's a time of a tsunami where all the forces are coming together. Next slide, please, Matt. So the other piece of the pie is, from my fitness background, I can share with you that one of the ways we used to manage health and wellness in partnership with companies was that there were a lot of very good partnerships with groups, organizations for employees to have memberships at gyms, discounted memberships, discounted passes, and all of those things. Well, post-pandemic, that whole universe has changed as well. And as such, that model is also not producing population health and improving health. Over 30% of fitness clubs in America have closed and probably will not open. So where do folks learn about good health, well-being, all of those things to be healthier, right? All right, so let me just take a breath. That's a lot to take in a short time. And let's open it up for a couple of questions.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that first part. A lot of great information there. I think the why now piece is so important. So those that are listening out there, do you have any questions, any comments? Please feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll bring them up, and Debbie will be happy to answer them. For those that are out there listening, wherever you are, I'm sure there's tons of questions out there. You know, I think for me, it's not, we know we're hearing the why now from you, Debbie, and what's fascinating is, okay, so we have some good data on the why now. It's the how do we put that in? I know we're going to get to that, so I don't want too many spoilers, but it's the how do we get the companies and all these places to get on board with this idea of, productivity is important. We know that, but so is wellness, because wellness leads to productivity. So any nuggets that you want to share on that?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you, David. The how, right? Based on all this data and where we are, if we look at, okay, we know this is what the universe looks like, these are the pain points, what are the solutions? That's going to be some great conversation for us to have in part 2. And I think one of the very first things within the solution bucket is, number 1, start with an audit of what you currently offer. So no two companies are exactly the same, right? Each company has its own persona, it has its own benefit plan, it has its own challenges. And so it's not a one size fits all. But I think the number 1 step for all employers, level setting with what's next, is to start with an audit of your benefit plan. And without giving away too much for our part 2, step 2 is clearly, once you've completed that audit, then an employee needs assessment, employee voice equals employee choice, followed up with a complete audit of spend. Those would be the top 3 strategies that I know from my career working in corporate wellness. We really had to take each company as its own entity. It has its own dynamic set of challenges. Basically review the benefit plan. There are so many new vendors in the benefit space now that are offering solutions to the problems that we're living with today. Things like childcare. That wasn't something we talked about so much. I did not feel like the companies I worked with, or financial wellness is top of mind in every employer right now. So those are just some of the ideas. Yeah.
Thank you. So we do have a question. We have a couple of questions here. So we'll start with the first one. Madiha, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And she asks, what is the best way to deal with employee burnout?
That's a great question. And that is relevant right now, right? With 1 in 5 employees reporting burnout. And let me share, in America, burnout is now a clinical chronic condition. It has an ICD-10 code. Just like obesity moved into that category several years ago, burnout is now in that classification. So taking it very seriously. So the best way, I believe, is to meet the employees where they are. And I think it's, at this point, providing education to employees about what burnout is, providing clear explanation, learning what the signs and symptoms are, and then direct them to your benefit plan. What are the solutions that your company offers that already pre-exist, that often, companies offer amazing benefits and employees just don't know. So that would be what I would recommend that you start with. And if you haven't someone in your world, find a subject matter expert to come in and provide a lunch and learn, a brief webinar, an education series, 15 minutes at a huddle. What is burnout, signs and symptoms, and then the roadmap to the solutions that the company offers.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to have to talk a little loud. There's someone mowing a lawn right outside my window, of course. We have another question. Then we'll get back to the presentation. But Leanne Ellis asks, She said, you talked about the wellness continuum. In your experience, is there a sweet spot on the continuum for organizations to pay attention to?
Oh, wow, Leanne, that's a brilliant, brilliant question. And it's a tough one, but in employer wellness, most of the decisions are made around the bottom line, right? So effectively, for the economics of a company to remain viable means mitigating healthcare spend. And so when you look at the pyramid of risk, the top 20% that basically consume 80% of the spend, your high risk employees that have metabolic syndrome, multiple disease states, multiple meds, that's where I would focus my energy to reduce healthcare spend. So that's an economic answer to your question. Globally, for the workforce, there must also be a layer for all employees to have equal opportunity to be engaged in day over day well-being initiatives so that everyone can learn more. It's amazing to me, my whole life in this career, how little the average person knows about good health, right? So we want to be available. You've got a captive audience at work. I think it's a blend of both of those things, organizationally with an economic driven plan, and then organizationally for a company to be healthy, well, and having individuals learn good stuff at work, right? About being healthy.
Oh, great answer. Great question. Thank you, Leanne. We have one last one before we get back to the presentation. That's from Sumana. And she would like you to talk a little bit more about what's missing in the employee benefits plan and what we need to add for that.
That's a great question too, Sumana. So if we look at the data, 1 in 5 Americans is burned out. What is the employee benefit solution for that? So when you dig in on that and you do a benefits audit, in some of the employee benefit webinars that I've been attending with different HR groups, one of the things that I'm hearing over and over is just because you have something in your benefit plan, example, you have access to a behavioral health therapist for burnout, if we just use that example. It does not mean that that check in the box is actually working. And so you need to do a deeper audit on that benefit. And it looks like this. So David, we want you to test out this benefit. On our benefit plan, we have access to a behavioral health therapist, 3 free sessions per 12 month over a calendar year. David, if you would, let's test this out. David, if you would, call the 1-800 number and then report back and let us know if somebody answered the phone, how many weeks, months would it take to get an appropriate person assigned to you, and did you get assigned appropriately? So you got to dig in, right? It's you can say, well, we have a benefit. Yeah, but if David called and he has to wait 12 months to speak to a therapist and he's in crisis and he's clinically burnt out, this is not going to do. So that is one of the strategies that I'd highly recommend. I have seen a fair bit pop up around financial wellness is in the top 3 of benefit options that are needed right now, finding vendors that address that. COVID has not been kind to our wallets. Many folks have come out of the pandemic in a much weaker financial state than they did prior to, right? And childcare, with 1 in 5 or 6 folks working from home, childcare is now in the top 3 as well. And I'll just leave it at that. We'll talk more about this in part 2. Thank you.
Perfect. And there was just a quick add-on, was a question from Dr. Jennifer Todd. And she was asking, how, in relation to Samantha's question, how adequate do you find EAPs overall? So if you can quickly answer that, and then I want you to get back to the PowerPoint. I don't want to run out of time, and so a quick answer to that one.
Yes, great question, Jennifer, and thank you for that. Totally inadequate. Period. End of story. And the part that I've learned in selling wellness to employers and being responsible for the programming, partnering with the brokers and the HR directors, totally inadequate. It has been viewed, much of what well-being has viewed, we put a check in the box. We're good. we've got wellness, we're good, we have an EAP, they can go talk to somebody. I know, looking at companies' reports, every quarter we'd get a report from all of our companies' EAPs, the engagement level below 10% for everything that was offered. So some of it rests with education around this being a benefit, and often employees truly don't know that it's out there, but it has not mitigated and or resolved many issues of what human beings bring to work every day, right? The actuality of it. That's a great question.
Great. So Matt, if you could bring up the PowerPoint so Debbie can continue on this wonderful journey that she's taking us on.
Thanks, David. All right, so let's get back to it. Thank you so much for the questions and the engagement. It's brilliant. So within the gym space, just to summarize, fitness clubs, 30% of clubs in America have closed. So employees seeking fitness options and or partnerships with employers, this model has changed significantly, much like wellness to well-being. Next slide, please. So we've got wellness at work, now well-being at work, we've got fitness clubs, we've got hybrid, we have all these things, but clearly we are not bending the cost curve around healthcare spend for companies. We are not improving the health of individuals internationally, nationwide, worldwide. Obesity is blowing up. So what is it that we're doing wrong? Clearly we have a public health crisis, and the things that we've done prior to the pandemic maybe manage the cost curve a little bit, but we have got to reset. So the reason I chose this slide backdrop, you can just see a smidge of it here on the left side, my left side, is a tsunami. It's a massive tidal wave, right? If there was ever a time for us to shine as health and wellness experts, clinicians, providers, to all work in partnership to create new and improved solutions to better health, this is absolutely our time. Next slide, please. And so one of the biggest, most obvious solutions to me is that let's bring well-being to work. Folks are at work more hours of their life than not in a certain stage of life. So you have a captive audience. And employee well-being at work equals engagement, satisfaction, retention, productivity, and all these things that we know, right? Next slide, please. So the pandemic has shown disparities in health. This was way overdue in my mind, way overdue. And it's good. This is another positive outcome of the pandemic, shining a light on diversity, inclusion, age-appropriate language, eliminating body shaming, just meeting people where they are, right? It's a perfect storm for us to shine with a world that is exhausted, burned out, fearful, and it's almost like we're not really sure when it all ends, right? So we've got to hold hands and reset and create new opportunities that make sense at this point. Next slide, please. The other piece that's not going away anytime soon, with stress levels, anxiety, burnout, musculoskeletal injuries from sitting too much, all of these things, healthcare spending is not going down. So year over year spend for health plans is going up 12 to 14% per year. For small to medium-sized employers, that can be it could be devastating, right? For some work groups where they have a catastrophic claim and they really can't afford it because they need equipment in the plant to run their business to stay viable, right? So without an employee well-being program, let me just say we are at risk for safety concerns. People are burned out, exhausted. That's when accidents happen. Productivity goes down. We're exposing unnecessary risk to our workforce. Healthcare spend is the trajectory is not sustainable, and the economic hardship, clearly we're all feeling that at this point, right? Next slide, please. So we know that pre-COVID will never return. The conditions prior to will never return. And I think that's okay. I honestly think that's okay. I think so much good has come out of the pandemic and some of the other challenges we face. We're all connected. We have opportunity to work hybrid, share information, workplace well-being programs can be in person by Zoom and all those things, right? So I think this honestly is our time to be super creative, super innovative, and just blow up well-being models for workplace well-being. It's our time. Next slide, please. This is just a quick show of mindset shifts. Post-pandemic, we're leaning much more into a collaborative partnership, networking, empowering, just being transparent. We just need to call it what it is and adapt appropriately. Next slide, please. At the same time, with all the time that we've had to reflect on what's happened, our identity of what measured success prior to the pandemic and now post, many of us are seeking more balance in all areas of our lives, and yet another positive outcome. Next slide, please. So the current state of health, just a couple of nuggets. Obesity is on the rise. We've got worsened outcomes because of COVID and ongoing. We have burnout as a clinical condition now. Exercise is way down. Some folks got more active with the pandemic, but many did not. And increasing costs of unwell employees. Next slide, please. So the gaps for us working in workplace well-being, providing solutions, education, in-person, hybrid, affordable opportunities, partnering with insurance, making some things happen there where there are more reimbursable opportunities. And we can talk more about that in our part 2 in August. Next slide, please. Again, the pandemic has shone a light on some of the inequities in employer well-being and workplace wellness programs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term wellness privilege, but that has come up. So I think our goal is to make sure that we are providing well-being solutions for all and getting the education out to the masses within the context of a work site, right? Next slide, please. So part 2, to David's point, we are going to speak more around what do we do with all this, with all these challenges that we're facing. We know that burnout is real. We know that obesity is on the rise. Hybrid work will remain. There's less access to fitness clubs because so many have closed. So in the workplace setting, how do we shine and create well-being programs that can move the masses, inspire the masses, get people healthier and bring education and gold nuggets to work? How do we make all of that happen, right? And so just a couple things to be thinking about. Employee voice equals employee choice. Employees are now stomping their booties and they are getting attention. So one of the strategies would be to form an employee resource group. Hear the voices, hear the concerns, meet the employees where they are. Do an audit of your benefits plan, and based on what the employees are telling you they need, child care, older adult care, EAP options that cover therapy, coaching, counseling, wellness coaches, what is it that they need? And then finding subject matter experts to support your mission, right? I truly believe we all need to be in it together and agree we all want to feel better. If nothing else, just feel better. And then define what that means, right? And start simple. You don't have to climb the mountain with the whole elephant on your back. You really don't. It could be as simple as education sessions, one a month, different times for different shifts. Just get started. It is our time to shine, right? All right. I think that wraps up the presentation, Matt. I do believe that was my almost last slide. If you'll move on to the next one. Oh, I apologize. I have one more. How to. Driving positive workforce culture, workplace culture. Lead and live the examples. We all know lead by example. CEOs that value their personal health and have a vision and mission for their workforce. That's when you think you see things happen. The opposite of that is a mountain to climb, and I can speak from experience on that. So leading from the top, communicate, prioritize well-being. It has to be in the thread of your fabric, your organization. It has to be in everything you do. It is the overarching umbrella of corporate America. That's what it needs to be. And recognize and reward, clearly give and receive feedback. This is where the ERGs can come in, right? Or a wellness advisory committee or something like that. And then develop and challenge. Next slide, please. I have this slide in every presentation I do, to be or not to be. I'm going to stop speaking and let you read it. We have a tendency to think in terms of doing and not in terms of being. We think that when we are not doing anything, we are wasting our time. But that is not true. Our time is first of all to be. To be what? To be alive, to be peaceful, to be joyful, to be loving. And that is what the world needs most. And that's what we need to do, is create environments that honor that. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. David, back to you. It has been pure joy to support Sumana and yourself and this team. Such an amazing initiative. And I'm just honored to be here. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Debbie. There you have her contact information was on the screen for you. And we'll flip, Matt, we can flip that back up before we close out so everybody knows how to get in touch with Debbie before we log off for today. But before we do have a few questions, but I just want to get to something because it was a good point that Carla had threw out there, that she's being Dutch. Some of the abbreviations were confusing. So that maybe you can clarify a couple of them there. I think like EE and ERGs, you know, for maybe some North American cultures, it's you know, common speak, but maybe not for Carla there. So maybe clarify a couple of those, and then Vinay has a couple of questions and comments we'll get to.
Yeah, sorry about that, Carla. Very good point, and duly noted. EE is employees, and ERG, employee resource group. So some companies have, employee resource groups. Some have employee wellness committees. Some have employee engagement committees. I've seen others call it employee advisory committees. So an internal employee group that's led and monitored by employees.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarification. Yeah, it's important. Sometimes we get into our rhythm and our speaks of abbreviations. I know in my world, we speak in a lot of abbreviations, and we don't always think that some people don't always pick up on them. So Vinay had a first question here, which was, Debbie, do you think leaders sense these mindset shifts are occurring or totally oblivious?
That is a great question. I would say to you, I believe it is, you're going to find a very high correlation of certain sectors and awareness and desire for health and wellness, and others complete oblivion and absolutely zero interest in tackling well-being. So things like lawyers groups, and this is a generalization, but based on my experience, the banking industry, healthcare industry, service industry, industries that are facing other challenges just to keep their businesses alive day over day. Like hospitals right now, there's a huge exodus of CEOs, burned out, cannot cope anymore. And so for those organizations, well-being should be top of mind, but they're at capacity just trying to keep nurses on the floor and keep their hospitals open, right? And that just is what it is. Restaurants are in the same mode, getting workers back on the floor to keep their restaurants viable. So it depends on the sector, but at the end of the day, my biggest learning in this industry has been it comes right back to leadership. If a CEO is 1,000% committed to their personal health and the well-being of their organization, then you will see it happen, because they will make it happen.
And then Vinay followed up as well with, I get the sense that leaders still think that wellness is a hassle to be dealt with versus an opportunity to create highly productive culture. Thoughts?
I agree. And I think that's one of the challenges we're facing as we climb the mountain, is that in the past, employee well-being programs, employee wellness, all of the benefits, everything that's part of a workforce being healthy and taken care of, has lived and breathed under the direction of human resources. Unfortunately, with what remains the biggest challenges as we continue on, fourth and fifth strain of COVID, Great Resignation continues, facing a recession, I could go on. HR, who typically has owned anything in our space, is burned out, stressed out. And yes, it is a hassle because they can't keep up with their day-to-day of hiring, training, onboarding, posting positions, dealing with FMLAs, people out on stress leave. And I feel for them. I absolutely feel for them. I honestly feel like workplace well-being sessions for HR managers would be so good. Someone needs to love on them to give them a chance to breathe. But because of the circumstances we're in and the way benefits lives and breathes in human resources, yeah, it kind of is a hassle because they're totally snowed over with their day-to-day.
Great. And first of all, so Carla stated that in the Netherlands, it's very similar. She agrees with that there. In terms of, a lot of what you've been saying in terms of the healthcare and the CEOs is what I'm guessing. Carla, please throw in the comments if I'm getting that correctly. Sumana put a FMLA question mark. So if you can clarify those.
Yes, Family Medical Leave Act.
Okay.
Family
Vinay also jumped in there. Thank you, Vinay, for that. Another question from Vinay. Do you find with a lot of your customers that they usually come to you because they have systemic issues already occurring, or that they are a sense of storm, or they sense that there's a storm brewing?
They always come after the fact. They always come when they're in crisis. Oh, we've got 22% of our workforce on FMLA. We can't run the show. We need more nurses. We need more call center people. What are we going to do? It's always after the fact. There are very few that are following the data like we do, going, oh, I see a storm brewing. Maybe I want a chief wellness officer on my team. Maybe we best tackle that now, versus 12 months from now. Because I promise you, 12 months from now, we are not going to be in a better place. There is nothing that indicates we're going to be in a better place than we are now. Obesity will rise, burnout will continue. So that's a great question. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but that is based on my experience, companies I'm working with. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately.
Yeah, listen, your experience is your experience. It's not about being doom and gloom. I don't think. I think it's what you're bringing to the table,
Thank
what you
you.
work with regularly, right? And it's the
Yeah.
unfortunate side of it, but it is that's where it's at. And we hope that something like these events, these webinars, these informative sessions, the Workplace Wellness Summit Club will bring this information to the table where we can have these conversations and then maybe open people's eyes to what's going on a little more closely, so that they can prevent the storm from happening, while it's in the brew phase. Carla brings a question here. So do they use group training and stress reduction in the USA so people learn to deal with every situation and reduce stress at the same time?
Yes, companies are starting to. That I'm seeing more of it and I'm seeing it spurred on by the return to work mandates. So I know firsthand a couple of tech companies in America and one cybersecurity company. They mandated their employees to go back to work. And I know this because in my master class that I teach, one of the gals, her brother is with this cybersecurity firm, and they mandated everybody back to work from being at home for 2.5 years, everybody back in Monday through Friday. It didn't go at all. People had meltdowns, which I see here. They couldn't cope. They didn't know how to interact. They didn't know how to have conversation back and forth. We've lost a lot of socialization and social skills. And I'm a very social person. And I've noticed my skills have taken a bit of a shift. Having friends and family visit, I'm like, that's interesting. So to answer the question, yes, employers in that particular instance, they brought a consultant in, very high dollar subject matter expert, to do anxiety training with the cybersecurity employees. What does anxiety look like? What are the signs and symptoms? What is burnout? How do you self-diagnose before you get into a fully developed condition? And strategies in your workday, day over day, to bring your heart rate down, to reduce the anxiety. So yes, it's starting to happen here. And I do think there's going to be more of that as we go, because HR directors, they don't have time to teach that. They're also not the experts. So I'm very hopeful we're going to do a lot more of that.
So we have a great comment from my good friend, Dr. Jennifer Todd. She, and like myself, I'm a college teacher as well. She teaches university. And just last night, she had 2 students asked to speak with her individually, and they broke down in tears. And so she says that, they're dealing with loss, trauma, anxiety, money concerns, etc. And, for her, for them, it was a safe space to express those emotions. But she worries that there are many people just barely getting by and no resources for them, nobody to go express those concerns. So she just wanted to share that. And I think that's really important because, these are students, but also I'm sure it exists in the workplace also, where they're not feeling safe to approach somebody and express these concerns. So I don't know if you're seeing that as well, Debbie, in your work.
Yes, very much. And it's about creating safe spaces, letting human beings be human beings, embracing employees at work holistically. You cannot expect David to come to work or go to class and think that David is just going to be worker David. David is still David, the dad, the husband, the brother, the mentor, the professor, all of those things, right? And workplace wellness is really missed on this. It's come to work and be a human doing. That is no longer acceptable. And that's why employees are jumping ship. They're like, I don't want to be stressed. So all of us coming together and creating safe spaces and acknowledgement that we are stressed. It's okay to say that. David, I'm stressed. This has been a tough 2.5 years. And finding people that will listen. Part of the study that I read with Virgin Pulse that came out last week on corporate wellness, it was 714. They had over 331 million folks in their database with all the things they do. And it had been reported that 21% of those individuals in a 2-week period had not spoken to a loved one or a friend or a colleague, someone that you would say you can just let yourself be you, right? So one takeaway, maybe I encourage all of us on this call a friend, Zoom a friend, FaceTime a friend, a family member. My sister's in Montreal. It's my duty to reach out regularly. Hey, sis, are you okay over there? This kind of thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, she can call me. I'm in Montreal. I could reach out if she needs because we're close by. Yay for Montreal
I'm going to
representing
tell her.
here. And so we'll wrap it up with one last question from Sumana, and I think it's a nice question to bring it, is that what is just one thing employers can do to take better data-driven decisions before the storm comes?
Number one is sourcing the data, knowing credible sources to get your data from, and then aligning it with getting your own data from your own company. So you can access global data, nationwide data, countywide data, statewide data, all of those things. I think the low-hanging fruit, David, and honestly, Sumana, is looking at your medical claims data. If you pull up your medical claims data and look at pharmacy spend and medical spend, look at the top 5 in each, you know what the health and well-being challenges are of your workforce. You'll see it by the spend. And then you can create a roadmap of solutions and strategy around, if you see that the number one prescription med and the number one cost of medical care is inappropriate use of ED and anxiety medicine, you've got some clear data to map solutions to that problem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And with that, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Oh, we did get another question from Carla. Let's let Carla will get the final question in, and that's, what about simply overall stress reduction training as a preventative action?
Yes, I would highly recommend that all employers, small, medium, and large, seriously take a look at adding this as part of their benefit plan year going forward. It is not going away, and it absolutely does need to be addressed. And so if you're going to revitalize your benefits plan, this would be one offering that would have to be in the top 3. It absolutely has to be.
Excellent. Again, we're getting to the top. I know we could probably continue on for another hour. There is Debbie's information. Once again, if you want to connect with her, LinkedIn, her website is there, as well as an email. So reach out there if you have further questions, you want to follow up. Debbie will be back for a part 2 in August, so stay tuned. You know, like our YouTube page, like the LinkedIn's, you know, connect with everybody that's been here today. Ask the questions. Myself, David Spinner, Sumana Jetty, the founder of the Workplace Wellness Club. Just a few notes before we sign off today. Again, we are the Workplace Wellness Summit Club. We offer various presentations, lives throughout the year. There's a big 2-day summit that we always plan. There's micro summits. We're going to do more webinars. Debbie will come back in August. The date to be finalized soon, so keep an eye out for that. Fireside chats. There's also really important out there for you that want to get your business out there, that connect with this information. There are sponsorship opportunities. So please reach out to myself as the Director of DEI and Business Development. Be happy to talk to you about our various sponsorship opportunities within the Workplace Wellness Club, and you know, to be part of this movement to seek health, wellness in the workplace. And don't forget, if you want to, you know, get back to some of this information, follow the YouTube channel under the Workplace Wellness Summit Club as well, and you'll be able to rewatch this entire webinar. Super, super important. You know, and then go to the Workplace Wellness Summit Club website, sign up, join the club, be part of this movement, and share the information. If any of you have information you want to share, you want to be part of one of our panels, you want to be a speaker for a webinar, feel free to reach out to us by email at workplacewellnessclub@gmail.com, and someone will get back to you. We'll connect. You know, Jared Allman who's out in the audience, I believe, and he's our key recruiter of our panelists and all our speakers. So he'll connect with you, and we'll be able to do that. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you're signing on from. And I look forward to seeing you guys again at our next session in August.